For Session Update, I'm Shannon Loehrke. Racial disparities and the achievement gap continue to plague Minnesota schools. Governor Dayton has proposed $100 million to help alleviate the disparities, and lawmakers are proposing legislation to address some of these concerns. Joining me in the studio to talk about her bill, the Student Inclusion and Engagement Act, is Senator Sandy Pappas. Welcome, Senator.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's nice to be here this year.
So your bill takes more of a carrot rather than a stick approach. Instead of expelling or suspending students, your bill seeks to provide interventions to change behavior. Why is this important?
Well, let me just tell you a little story. I was on the E12 committee years ago, and I thought it'd be really good for me to get into the classroom. I was already a college professor, but I hadn't really taught in the E12 system, or K-12 system, as we called it then. So St. Paul schools were looking for substitutes, and you could be a substitute teacher if you had a bachelor's degree with 3 days training.
Wow.
So I did the training, and one thing I learned in the training that still sticks with me today is that for every negative thing you say to a child, you have to say 7 positive for them to feel that it's equal. So in approaching our kids, even those that have some behavioral issues, we really need to look at positive reinforcement, as well as having a clear understanding as to what's going on at home. You know, is there violence in the home? Are they coming to school hungry? You know, have they been bullied? Are there really other issues going on? And not just assume that, you know, they're just a problem and kick them out of the classroom.
Right. So what are some of the interventions that would be used?
Well, our teachers need to definitely be trained in what they use. It could be that instead of expelling a student from school, that we go back to Saturday school or detention after school and keep them engaged in the school, have something positive going on, continue the learning, and not just assume that they should be expelled. Because when they're expelled, they lose that learning opportunity. And we not only have a learning achievement gap, but we have an expulsion achievement gap. Although, for example, African American students are only 12% of the enrollment in the state, they are 38% of the discipline cases.
Right. Well, and there was just a story on the news the other day about the perception of teachers, the same behavior, and the African American student might be sent to the principal's office, whereas the white student wouldn't, which is interesting and brings me to my next point. What kind of training will be involved for the staff, the teachers, the administrators? Is that a pretty big cost, and is there a rollout in the bill for how that will happen?
Well, we do have dollars dedicated for teacher training in all our schools, and certainly the teacher education schools as well should be thinking about including this in their curriculum so that our future teachers have training. And then I think having a mentor in the school would also help teachers, that if they have a problem with the student, to be able to go to a more experienced teacher, to go to a counselor, to go to the principal. The vice principal should really be trained in all these strategies and techniques. So yes, it would cost a little bit, but it seems to me that that's a very useful tool for teachers to have.
The way I read the bill, it's a pretty comprehensive bill, and essentially would shift how we treat troubled students. It also seems that it would take some time for the effects of this legislation to really be seen in changes in behavior. Do you feel that there's a long-term commitment to this kind of a strategy?
No, not yet. In fact, my bill was laid over, and the bill that was passed was a task force to bring all the stakeholders together in the state to discuss all these issues and all these elements, and have kind of everyone at the table making a strong commitment to changing the way we discipline students. Now that process happened in St. Paul, and so that's why we had a bill, but it hasn't happened throughout the state. So I think in St. Paul, the school board could still move forward with trying this approach. You know, teachers want to be safe. They don't want to be in a situation where they're afraid of their students, or they feel like their students are going to injure them. And students should not lash out. I mean, at a certain point, if there is a weapon involved or if there is violence involved, obviously you have to remove the student. But there's plenty other behavior before that that's simply called insubordinate behavior. You know, talking back to a teacher, obviously it's rude. students shouldn't do it. And we really need to teach that respect from early years with students, but it's difficult to do it when they're teenagers.
So in authoring this bill, was there any particular research or experience that you used to kind of shape these policies?
It was more what I saw going on in the St. Paul schools and the Minneapolis schools as well, and that the advocates who are concerned about the expulsion rate came to me and asked me if I would work with them on this legislation.
Senator Pappas, thank you so much for stopping by today. This was a great conversation.
All right, thank you.